Yeah, I think the enemy is definitely going after men and the family unit. If he can take down the family unit, it is a...
Now, what do you think are the biggest hurdles that are keeping men from prioritizing those 4 areas in their life on a daily basis?
Society as a whole has become infatuated with the victim card, right? Like, you know, it almost looks good to be a victim to something. And so I think, and then what happened was I guess our office manager had been embezzling money. Once we moved on, we found this, and she'd been stealing money for the entire year that we had hired her.
Ruslan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic guest today with us. He's an entrepreneur. He's a motivational figure in the space. He does some incredible things with men's development. I can't wait for you to get to know him. But before we get into that, guys, my name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. So if you're not new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And what are you doing? Why are you just lingering? That's weird. Just subscribe, join. All right. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today is Skylar Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm grateful to be here.
Could you pull that mic up a little closer to you?
Yeah, definitely. Is that better?
Nice
Okay.
and close. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So you do a lot of work in the men's development space, right? And there seems to be a lot of tension right now in terms of kind of 2 fractions that are at odds. One is the feminist, men are trash, they need to figure it out, man up, right type of message. And then you have the other extreme, which is the more men's right, red pill, Andrew Tate, no one understands men's issues. There's some overlap with like the incel community, right? And so what do you make of just the war on men that's happening right now on a macro level, right? It seems like if you're too masculine, it's toxic masculinity. If you're not masculine enough, then women don't want to have anything to do with you. But you have to be just emotional enough and masculine enough. And there's this overwhelming pressure that seems to be pulling from every single aspect, right? And of course, you're approaching it from a kingdom perspective. So what do you make of just kind of the state of manhood and the war on manhood in general right now?
Yeah, I think the enemy is definitely going after men and the family unit. If he can take down the family unit, it is it's the wisest thing he could do. And so I think right now it's pretty confusing for what it means to be a man, right? So for the younger generation, like, hey, what are we supposed to be, the Andrew Tate version of masculinity, or like what does it look like? And so you know, the thing that's hurting our country the most, I would say right now, is weak men. Weak men are ruining our country. So if Satan can get a man to perform below his God-given potential and can get him to be a passive man, or even to leave the home, a weak man leaves his home. And so the statistic is 85% of the youth that are in jail right now, that are in prison, are there from fatherless homes. So they're 85% from fatherless homes.
I know it was high. I didn't know it was that high.
Very high.
Wow.
And there's some staggering statistics around poverty rates from fatherless homes. And so there's still, I didn't think it was that big. There's still an epidemic of men leaving their homes. Like men, I know personally men that have left their homes to go make money across the country to pursue careers. And so I think there's just a big issue with passive men in general, men that are not showing up with strength and power. And it's not physical strength, right? Like Andrew Tate. It's, hey man, can you take a stand? Can you stand for what's right? Can you show up for your wife and kids and focus on them more than your professional career, right? Can you keep your priorities in order, and can you order them correctly?
What I saw some of the footage of these retreats that you do, and the intensity that goes into it, right? There does seem to be a physical component to what you guys are doing, but it also seems like you're addressing it from a holistic standpoint. So can you kind of tell me about those and like the paradigm that you guys are approaching men's development in? What do you do there?
Yeah, I'd say so hurt people, right? So hurt men. And so there is with those fatherless homes and with passive men, and with the challenge of men not being intentional, it's left a lot of boys that haven't become men, right? It's left a lot of broken men. And so what we do is we work with guys in a deep at a deep level from a personal development standpoint, faith-based personal development. So we'll go in and we do some healing work. So I love working with guys, man, and having them bring the darkness into the light. So James 5:16 talks about bringing the things, confessing our sins and having others pray for us so that we may be healed, right? So the way to become healed through James 5:16 is through confessing our sins and having somebody pray over you.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
the way to be saved is by coming to Jesus. The way to be healed is by bringing the darkness into the light.
That's good.
And so there's power in that. And so, however, where do guys go to go talk about their pornography issues, right? For me, right, I struggled with porn for years. I found my first porn magazine when I was 12 up in a treehouse, and so that hooked immediately. And so I for a lot of my life, a lot of even my adult life, I was challenged with porn and just not having lust and really looking at women that way. And so I didn't have a place to go to share that stuff. And so I think there's power in community. And I think you've built an amazing community. And there's power in transparency and bringing the light into bringing the dark into the light. So I think so I think that's a big part of what we do. And then we add some physical components of it, right? If you can get a guide, God shows up when we reach the end of ourselves.
So you almost kind of need a degree of brokenness.
We do.
Yeah.
That's when God shows up, right? A lot of times we can do a lot of the things in our own strength, but man, when we reach the end, that's when we really get to see God show up.
So in your events, and what are they called again?
Rise Up Kings.
Rise Up Kings. Yeah. Forgive me for forgetting that. So
Yep,
Rise Up Kings. Is there kind of that military boot camp component to them where someone's yelling in your face and all that stuff, or is it not? Because I've seen some wild boot camps of very, very, very privileged men going and paying someone to kind of humiliate them and yell at them.
Yeah.
That's not the vibe at your events, though.
There's a movement of those type of events.
Sure.
I call those like ego-driven events.
Yep.
It's all about the ego, right? You got these instructors just yelling at the top of their lungs, right? It's ego fueled, which is not Christ-like. And so our events, we have a component of intensity that we bring, a physical intensity. So we have some Green Beret guys that work with us, a lot of military guys that work with us. It's not a military boot camp per se. However, we do add a physical component, which makes it very dynamic, and also it hits guys at a different level than if they show up to a 3 or 4 day conference and someone's talking at them on stage. So ours are what we call experiential events.
Okay.
So it's where we take someone through an experience, and then through that experience they get exposed. Something gets exposed, and then God can show up and do some healing in that process. So even through an intense physical experience, man, God can really show up in those moments. And it's funny. I always ask at our events, like 50% of the guys I say, hey, have you ever heard from God in this way? So more than 50% of the guys hear from God at the events. I believe part of that reason is because they've kind of been broken down, or they don't have their facade up anymore, and they've released. So I think the physical, we have something called the 4 pillars: faith, family, fitness, and finance. And that everything is built around those 4 pillars, and they're ordered in that way on purpose, right? And in our society, we get into a funk if we get out of order. So finances, if that's top priority, right, there's going to be chaos and disorder. And so the 4 pillars of what we order off of, and physical component, man, the physical nature for men specifically, it's important to do some level of physical fitness.
I mean, that's similar to what I preach about here, which is becoming the priest, provider, and protector of your home, right? So you said faith, family, fitness, finances. And so you would say in that order. I mean, I would agree with you in that if a man has those 4 areas in proper order and proper alignment, it seems like the rest of life will kind of fall into place, right? So whether someone is married and going through a hard time in their marriage, or someone is single and they want to be married, or someone is looking for some sort of career breakthrough, I feel like if a man could figure out those 4 areas and have some degree of competence and mastery in those areas, it seems like everything starts to open up, right? Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Very fair. Yeah, I feel like guys can only handle so many things at once, having so many spinning plates. So if we say, hey, here's these 15 things you need to focus on each day. It's like, whoa. Here's the 4 things you got to invest in each day. And so for faith, like we actually have an app built where it's for guys that come through our events, but we have like part of the app is tracking your points. We actually track points every day. So we have hundreds of guys across the country that are tracking their points in their faith, reading the Bible every day, right? Their family, investing in their marriage. So doing something nice or showing your wife that you love her every single day to keep her cup filled. Fitness, some kind of exercise daily, and then finance, leveling up through a personal development book or a finance or a business book, or in some way leveling up the business
developing
side of
some new skills, skill
Exactly.
acquisition, something to make you more of an asset and less of a liability to the people you do business with.
Yeah, to be excellent, because I believe as Christians we're called to or we have the we're called to excellence. Jesus was an excellent man.
Yep.
And so some of us are running businesses or working at careers where we're not showing up in excellence. And so,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think we've been talking for 10 minutes. I feel like we've solved all of the issues in the world right now. Okay. In 10 minutes. And it really goes back to those 4 pillars that you're talking about, right? Now, what do you think are the biggest hurdles that are keeping men from prioritizing those 4 areas in their life on a daily basis, right? Meaning that sometimes folks don't know if they have to push to develop the capacity to manage those 4 areas well, right? Or if they need to get to a season in a specific area to have the capacity to manage those. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so what do you think is the barrier to entry in terms of why guys, I think most people know, right? Jesus, family, fitness, finances, I probably should be doing and prioritizing those 4 things. But so very few people do, right? So what do you think are the biggest barriers in terms of people conquering that?
I think the first thing is realizing that it's even possible. So, right, where there is no vision, the people perish, right? We perish for lack of a vision. And so if you realize that being a 4-pillar man or woman is possible, like that realistically you can do all those things and you could excel in all those areas and you have enough time if you make the time. I think that's number 1. And then number 2 is I think the victimhood mentality has kind of captured our culture, really, where they're a victim to life. They don't realize how much responsibility and power they have. There is a lot we do a lot of work with people that we do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, and in general you would think that they have a responsibility mindset, but man, everybody gets tied into pulling the victim card, whether it's like the government or, hey, COVID hit me, like this is why my business isn't doing as well as it could have. Like we pull the victim card. Society as a whole has become infatuated with the victim card, right? Like, it almost looks good to be a victim to something. And so I think realizing that man, the place where we can show up with the most power is when we realize we have responsibility over life. Like God's in control and ultimate control. However, man, he's given us a lot of responsibility. And so if we're not happy at our job, like it's completely up to us to make a difference and to shift that. If we're not happy in some area, like, so we have a huge role to play in our life, and we're not at the whim of the government or society. So when you realize that too, so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is a framework. This is a general framework. When you have a vision, you realize, you know what, I actually have some responsibility and I can take this thing by the horns. And then also, hey, then what's the framework? I think just a general framework of and then the 4th thing is associations, right? Which I think is powerful around the community that you're building. Having the right associations of other people that are leveling up in those arenas inspires you to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the whole, like, you are the sum of the 5 people closest to you, right? So I like that you started with like a vision mindset, because I would agree. I think there's a lot of issues with mindset right now in general. Even, I'm hearing folks like Tucker Carlson, who's like a conservative, and he's like, you're a peg in the wheel and the system is broken and you're a victim. He won't say you're a victim, but he will placate to this. The big guy the big guy is controlling everything. The little guy can't get ahead. And it's like, dude, this is straight like let's just say worst case scenario, all of it is true. The globalists are running it. The agenda is there. There's a lizard people who are in the back rooms of the influencers who are controlling everything. All of that is true. You still can't do anything about that, right? Like, I can't do anything about that, but what I can do is what I choose to put in my mouth every single day. What I can do is if I choose to go to the gym and work out. What I can do is if I choose to read my Bible. What I can do is if I choose to love my wife. And so I'm hearing that mentality from both sides of the political aisle, right? And it's weird that it's never been like this before, right? And so you could slide into that mentality anywhere.
Yeah, you lose your power, right? If you believe, so life either happens to you or for you, right? And so that's a core belief that I have, and that's tied into Romans 8:28, right? So in all things, God works out everything for the good of those that love Him, who've been called according to His purpose, right? It's a huge verse. I know that it's big for you, and so that means that means like he's going to work it all out. So it works out for our good. And so we just have to trust that. So that means the victim mentality is opposite of Romans 8:28. And so we can easily get tied. And when we get tied in there, it zaps. I remember just as a kid, man, whenever I struggled with early on in my childhood. My parents got divorced when I was 5, and so they split. And I remember there was other kids that had divorced parents, and they always saw that as the reason why they didn't have what they had, and the reason why they were struggling in life. However, I just saw it as it is what it is, and so it really didn't affect me, right? And so I think our mindset around victimhood plays a huge role into the way it's our world view and the way we see everything. Is it happening for us? Like, you know what? My parents got divorced. I struggled with, right, all these things. I struggled with porn, but man, my mess became my message. So that thing that I struggled with the most became the message and the platform that God's used to be able to help thousands of men. And so man, get rid of the victim mentality and like lean into, dude, everything happens for you, and there's some blessing on the other side of it. So like lean into that discomfort and the pain that you're in right now, whatever it may be, because God's got some plan on the other side of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, and the truth is that there are people out here that have actually been victimized. There
Real
are
victims,
people,
100%.
right? And whether they've experienced sexual assault or I think there's like 9 childhood traumas or 8 childhood traumas, right? And it's like displacement, right? Sexual assault, physical assault, like there's these specific things. I remember looking at it one day and I was like, dude, I've gone through like 7 out of the 8 or whatever. Like it was like a high amount, right? Wow. But in all of it, I had to come to grips and come to peace and come to acceptance with it, right? But then just pushing through it allowed me to say, all things work for good for those who love God and call according to purpose, right? That which the enemy meant for evil, God's used for good, right? It's in the Joseph story, I think Genesis 50:20. And so I think like coming to peace with it is oftentimes the beginning of healing, right? Coming to grips with it. And so you said your mess can become your message. I like to believe that like showing people our scars can help compress the healing for folks on the other side. Right?
100%.
Because they might actually be going through something, right? And people react to traumatic events differently. You could have twin brothers raised in the same household with the same divorced parents, with the same alcoholism, with the same trauma, and one grows up and repeats the cycle, and the other one grows up and becomes a drug and alcohol prevention counselor and an entrepreneur, right? It's like, it's weird how life works that way for different people. And there's a lot of things we can't control, but what we can control is how we respond.
Yeah.
You know, what we can't control is how we respond. And so I love that
great point.
You're talking about that. So take me a little bit back. You talked about being divorced. You said you were from out here not too long ago in Carlsbad. We're in Vista, California, for those of you guys that wonder where I'm at. So tell me a bit about your story, what you come from, and how'd you go from being here a couple of years ago to now being in Texas and just building this business and all that stuff.
Yeah, man. I grew up in a place called Hemet. You know where Hemet's at?
You grew up in Hemet?
Yeah, I grew up in Hemet.
Dude, hold on. I've done 2 shows in Hemet in the last year.
Wow.
Hemet is rough.
Yeah, Hemet is rough.
Hemet is rough, man. Yeah. And there's not a whole lot there. And it's in the Inland Empire. I'm telling, as if you don't know this stuff, right? Yeah. For those who, and it's like tucked away. I thought Hemet was like, oh, it's right next to Temecula. No. It's like another 40 minutes from Temecula and Lake Elsinore and Marietta. It's deep out there, and there's not a whole lot to do. And now, I'm not sure how long you were there, but now a lot of the transplants from Los Angeles, they can't afford to stay in Los Angeles, can't afford to stay in San Diego. So it's like a lot of the worst criminals are ending up in Hemet right now.
They used to actually ship from Menifee and Murrieta and Riverside, all the mentally ill. They had a contract with Hemet. Hemet would take the money, so they would ship literally everybody struggling with mental illness would go to Hemet to do all their program work, and then they would be out in Hemet. So so yeah, I grew up in the Hemet. Actually, kind of funny story is my mom took care of mentally ill patients. So she took care of 5150s is what she would call them, and so that would she took care of them, man. And I grew up in that environment. Parents divorced. I struggled. Personally, just with insecurity and just challenges on my own self-worth, and I just always, but I had a vision. I wanted to get out of there. I knew Hemet wasn't the right place, and I knew that you are who you hang out with, and you become who you hang out with, and so I really just focused on like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So at 12, I started a little business. I started like doing website design. I started doing mowing lawns, all the stuff. I knew that if I could create some level of financial success, I could get out of there. And so that was.
How did you have that revelation? How did you know that you are who you surround yourself with? Like you're saying at a fairly young age.
Yeah.
What clicked that said, if I could change the circle of people I'm around, then I could change my trajectory in life?
Yeah. And it's really everything, man, associations. And so that was, I'm not sure. I saw my sister, we both grew up right in the same environment, yet she decided to hang out with people that weren't ideal. And man, she got into hardcore drugs. She ended up getting pregnant when she was 16. I love her, amazing woman. Had another baby when she was like 19. My other stepsister got pregnant when she was 15. So I saw the level of associations that were happening, and I said, man, I don't want that. So I always kept a little bit of a healthy distance from, quote unquote, right, the kids that were really bad influences. Sure. So I kind of I stuck to the kids that were like medium bad influences.
So you saw her in some of the areas she struggled in, and as a cautionary tale, you were able to avoid that.
Yep, 100%.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I definitely had friends that went on to do serious time in prison, and that, you know, did everything, like from catching murder charges to robberies. And I had some of those same cautionary tales as a kid, you know? So, okay, I'm sorry, go on. So you see your sister, that makes you beeline to like, okay, I'm not gonna be around the real crazy kids. I'm gonna be around the semi-crazy kids. That don't 100%. Okay.
Yep.
And so you developed this entrepreneurial spirit. Where'd that come from?
I saw my uncle. My uncle used to own some those for those of you watching, those payphone machines, right? Good old payphones. So he used to own payphones. He'd go around and collect the quarters from payphones, and he had ATM machines. So I saw that, and so I started multiple businesses and little small things, never really anything big, all the way up until I was 18. I studied for my real estate exam, got that going, got my real estate license when I turned 18. So I was a hustler. I was a very ambitious. I joined a network marketing company early on. I'm like, I want to create freaking success. So that was if we ordered those 4 pillars, that was my number one pillar, was like financial success, was really proving myself. And I've actually found it to be true. Most entrepreneurs, the ones that I've worked with, we worked with a lot, there's some desire in them that's like an internal aim that they have to prove themselves. There was some level of scarcity or struggle that they went through, and then there's a desire to become somebody from that. And so I see that a lot. And so that was my aim for a while as a kid and even as a young adult, which was great and caused a lot of chaos at the same time.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you said entrepreneurs, a lot of them are coming from some form of scarcity, right? Yeah. And this is a statistic that bugged me out, and I heard it from Dave Ramsey years ago, but to even go deeper on it, it even took things to another level. There's a book that came out called, I'm sure you've heard of it, The Millionaire Mind and the Millionaire Next Door.
Yep.
Amazing books. And in reading those, I found out that 85% of America's millionaires are first generation rich, right? So the vast majority of people, and by millionaire, we mean $1 million net worth, right? So they may not have $1 million in the bank, but when you combine all their assets, their homes, and in Millionaire Next Door and Millionaire Mindset, you find a lot of these folks aren't necessarily entrepreneurs. They're just, you know, back then, post office, the teacher, the person that was just diligent, quiet life, disciplined, right? But 85%, which is like a crazy number when you really think about it, right? There's 15 million millionaires, right? You're statistically more likely to be a millionaire than you are to have abs and be in elite level shape, which is crazy to think about, right? And then, but I dug deeper on this, and I was like, what about billionaires, right? Because that's different. Like to really jump into being a billionaire,
huge difference.
You're coming in with something, dude. 65% of America's billionaires, because now we're getting into entrepreneurship, right? Because you're not gonna IRA your way to a billy, right?
No way.
For the invest
no
away.
way.
That takes some degree of ingenuity. That takes some degree of starting something, an app, something, right? 65% of America's billionaires are first generation rich. They did not inherit it.
Incredible.
It's crazy, right?
Wow.
But it goes back to that point of I got to prove myself. I got to make a name for myself. I'm operating from this brokenness, maybe scarcity. Maybe I was broke and then I was able to completely defy the odds, right? And often unchecked, it becomes the God. It becomes the North Star, right? And so I've been reading through the Gospel of Luke, and Jesus talks a lot about the rich, right? And he doesn't have great things to say, right? And I think when we think about rich people, we're always thinking about like the person that's in the next tax bracket, right? It's like the people that are a little more. And globally speaking, like, man, if you're in America and you're average globally, you're in the 1%.
Yeah.
You're rich globally speaking, right? Quality of life, everything. And so I think there's this tension that if we allow money and status to succumb and completely define who we are, like you can lose yourself very easily in that. And it sounds like you're echoing that in terms of your interactions with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it is. I think my belief around this is if we have money, right, gripped in our hands, right, if money's our primary grip, then because I have a video that I do, which is, does God want you to be wealthy, right? It's a real interesting kind of conversation. Does he have a desire for you to be wealthy? And I would say not necessarily. However, does he want, I was reading in Genesis, and it's interesting. So God's view on money. So in Genesis, there's a couple verses that talk about, and there was gold, and God said it was good. So it's not even money's neutral. God actually believes money is a good thing. However, it can easily take somebody over. And so the deal is, right, for people that are listening to this, right, if they're on the journey of developing wealth and creating wealth, the goal is that, man, we got to release the grip that we have on money. And so it's a visualization that I have where I have a loose grip on money, meaning like at any point, Lord, if you want to take the things that you've given me, right, and he's blessed us. We just sold our business. We had a water and fire restoration company in Temecula, about 44 employees, and a pretty successful little company, and just sold that 3 months ago. And so again, we got a decent amount of cash that came in, but I'm making sure I have a really loose grip on this, because I'm like, Lord, don't let me start to grip onto this cash and this money. Otherwise, because if there's anything in my hands that are not him, right, then he may eventually, my belief is he may eventually say, all right, let's open that grip up a little bit. Let's just, you know what, we're going to have something happen where so he's going to allow things to happen. So the whole time, Lord, I got a loose grip on all this stuff, even right in a lot of things in life. And that's created a lot of peace when people that have, it's created a lot of peace for me, but it's allowed me to give more, right? So I have a big philosophy just around giving. We decided this year to start giving 50% of all of our businesses and everything that we do. And so we made a huge commitment on that. And that was the biggest, most we've ever gave. And I have no expectation of blessing around it. However, I'm like, Lord, I want to prove, like, I do have Lord, I just felt called, like, I have a loose grip on this stuff. Like, there's enough money around the world. There's enough of everything, Lord. I don't need to hoard and grasp onto every bit that I possibly can to be successful. Like, I want to loose as grip as possible.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and I think of a buddy of mine, what do we say? Money is a terrible master, but a great servant.
Yep.
Right. And so sometimes we think that only rich people get mastered by their money. No, sometimes poor people could be mastered by their money as well.
My mom has a very scarce mindset. She's been poor her entire life. She has she thinks about money more than I do. Right. So poorer people, right, think about money typically more than other people. So so like she's worried about the little things so again, there's not a right or wrong. I agree. It's not, hey, are we supposed to have a ton of money? Not necessarily. It just depends on, are you being a good steward with what you have?
That's right.
And I believe God wants to bless those that are great stewards.
Yeah. I mean, my memory verse right now is he who is faithful with little will be given more, right? But and this is an interesting word, and it's an NASB 2020 edition, 2015 edition. It says, but he who is unrighteous with very little will be unrighteous with more. And I was like, why did they translate that word unrighteous, right? Like he was faithful with little, but then he was unrighteous. And so it seems to be that for whatever reason in that translation, they believe that bad stewardship is unrighteousness, right? It's a falling short of what we could be doing. And so I'm totally with you. I think that it's about the stewardship, and it's about the heart, not about the amount. And I think how you attain the wealth also matters, right? Because if you attain it in a way that's reckless and harmful and hurtful, I mean, I got acquaintances that are in the adult entertainment industry. They got a lot of money, but man, is their life harder, and man, is there less peace, you know? And so it's like, I think how we attain it and why are we attaining it. I think all that stuff matters to God. So you mentioned you just recently sold a business. Going back to your story, Hemet, California, young entrepreneur, get your real estate license at 18. So how do you then go on to build all these build all these businesses?
Yeah, then so when I was we started our first really successful company I did called Superior Cleaning. It was a carpet cleaning company out in Temecula.
Okay.
And then we scaled to 1 van, 2 vans. I've been
So self-funded, or did you get investors?
Self-funded, yeah. So bought a little carpet cleaning van, bought a truck mount, started doing carpet cleaning, passed out flyers door to door. I met my wife right around that time also, and so we kind of started growing that together to 1 van, then 2, then 3, then 4. Then
how old are you?
I was about 24.
Okay, so you're young.
Yep,
you're young. So the real estate didn't happen at 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the thing, but eventually you got to the thing, which was a carpet cleaning business.
Yep.
Doesn't sound like something you were necessarily passionate about.
No.
Or you just, this is a opportunity. You sought the opportunity, not necessarily the passion.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, and so luckily I was good at marketing. So marketing really helps. That's a one skill set that is, I believe, necessary for any entrepreneurs. Like, man, you got to learn the marketing side of things.
That's good.
And so, I started marketing that, grew to one of the top carpet cleaning companies in the area. And then eventually we had actually went on a cruise. And as me and Jessica were like, cool, the business is finally running itself. We had an office manager in place. Stuff was rocking. And then we were on this cruise and I was sitting there with Jessica and I'm like, hey, babe, like stuff's going well, but like Nikki's running our business. Nikki was our office manager. I said, do you fully trust Nikki? And she's like, well, what do you mean? And so I said, I just, something about her I don't fully trust. And she said, I kind of feel the same way. And so I said, okay, I don't want anybody on my team that I don't 100% trust. Like that's something I had to go south before. So we came back from the cruise, moved on from her. And then what happened was our office manager, Nikki, had been embezzling money. Once we moved on, we found this, and she'd been stealing money for the entire year that we had hired her. And it gave me, and that's when I had to come up with these ideas, right? I'm like, man, because in business, it's really the biggest personal development program you can be a part of. Like business is challenging, and so you're growing and learning from all these lessons. I'm like, so what does this lesson mean, right? Because our emotions and the way we see life is really dependent upon the meanings we give things, like the meaning. So I'm like, okay, I have an opportunity now. What does this mean? Don't trust employees anymore? Or was this a huge learning lesson for me on not taking my eyes off the ball? And so I decided this was going to happen for me, not to me. And so we ended up closing the carpet cleaning down because we were struggling with it after that, and we grew a restoration company. But before that, kind of an important part of the story was like on my journey of creating success, money was primary, and the immaturity of growing. Like it's funny, you can create a lot of success and still be an immature man at the same time.
Oh yeah.
So I ended up cheating. Like I got a call from an ex-girlfriend, ended up cheating on Jessica when we first got together.
Okay.
Yep. Met up with my ex, made a bad decision. Wasn't going to tell her. So I wasn't going to tell her at all. And then I met with our, this is right before we got married, actually. So right before that. And so we got with our marriage counselor, our premarital counseling guy. And he says, hey, here's the deal. You get one opportunity to get everything off your plate, anything that you've done, because if you hold on to it and you keep it a secret, it's gonna use up energy inside you for the rest of your life. And so I had a moment. I had to figure that out. Hey, am I going to share this and potentially risk the whole marriage to be a better man and to be the husband, or do I not share anything?
So when you're doing this premarital thing, are you a believer at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are a believer.
Yeah, I was a believer most of my life, man.
Okay.
There was a
How did you reconcile all of that? Like just kind of like a lapse in judgment, and you just kind of
it wasn't really a lapse in judgment. It just showed a weak man. That when I talked about weak men in the beginning, man, I was a weak man character wise. I didn't have strong integrity built. Meaning, if I felt like doing something, I would go do it versus being very disciplined and diligent. So how did I reconcile that? I decided to tell her. So I ended up telling Jessica that I had made that mistake. She slept on the couch. It almost ended the whole thing. But I didn't want to have energy taken up inside me. Like I wanted to be a great husband for the rest of my life. Yep. So I ended up telling her, and it's been a journey for we've been married for 13 years. So it's been a journey for the last 13 years.
How does she take that?
It was brutal, man. It's affected our marriage. We've had a lot of growth through that whole thing. It's made her be able to support other couples that have been cheated on. So it's been tremendously incredible for our marriage and a very dark time for our marriage at the same time. Because every time I would also struggle with porn when I did, early on in the marriage, I would tell her, and it would always take that pain back to that moment. So it was kind of brutal, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah. You could choose to sin. You can't always choose the consequence, you know? And so if there's things that happen before the marriage or in the marriage, they could often follow you for your marriage and you're like, like there's this thing here, right? And it just takes time for certain scars to heal.
And I have a belief, pain is the path. So pain is the path. So what does that mean? So James 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know if you're familiar with those verses, but consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So how do you become mature and complete, not lacking anything? It's through the trials. So it's through the trials that scripturally you become mature and complete, not lacking anything. Yet we run from trials. We run from the pain. We run from the difficult decisions in our lives, when in reality, it's the pain that actually refines us. And yet that's what I see with a lot of Christians. And the weakness that's tied in is, man, let's go do hard things together. Let's lean into the difficult times, because we know that pain, man, it refines us. It improves us. And so that's something that, right, through Rise Up Kings, it's a big part of what we teach is, dude, go have the hard conversations with your wife, with your employees, with everything. Lean into the pain and just trust that God has a plan through that journey. Right? You will be refined through that. And it may be a dark time. However, like Jesus wasn't searching for comfort. He was leaning into pain and difficult things. Yet as Christians, right, we want to reach this retirement age. Like, I can't wait to get to retirement. What, so you can be comfortable? Like, man, that's the opposite of what Jesus was doing.
That's good.
So it's like pain is the path. Like, lean into the difficult things and have that be your worldview versus how do I do the easy things and make everything easier in my life?
That's good. So 24-ish, you're about to get married, you confess this stuff, the business, some sketchy stuff that was happening behind your back. And then how do you then go on and build these additional businesses?
I just started scaling that company. I always had a vision of getting a company to run by itself. For some reason, a lot of entrepreneurs actually have that. They'd love to see their thing kind of run without them at times. And so just started scaling, hired a coach, went to some personal development seminars. There's a lot of secular personal development out there. So did some of those, spent some time with like Tony Robbins and those guys. And it was one of the reasons we started Ruck was like, if you're a Christian, because scripturally it says, do not take counsel from the ungodly. So that's a verse. I don't recall the verse, but do not take counsel from the ungodly. And
sounds like something in Proverbs, maybe.
Yeah. And so is that really true, right? Should we not take, that's a kind of a big deal to not take, because there's a lot of ungodly counsel out there. So that was a huge gap for me with personal developments. Where do I go to find faith-based personal development? So I went to a lot of secular stuff, and I ended up just really finding a way to build a good systemized business. So systemized the crap out of it, like got it running really well, built an executive team, scaled leadership, and like put all the processes and people in place. I'm a big business guy. So that's like a primary thing I teach is business and personal development. And so we scaled it to the point where it ran on its own. So I moved to Orange County and then got the business to run 2 days a week on its own. And actually wrote a book about it called The 2 Day CEO, and like, how do you scale a business to run on its own? And so, and that was it all the way. So within 5 years, I got to the business running itself. We built it up to about 10 million.
It's the same cleaning business.
Yep. Same cleaning business.
Yeah. That verse is Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, by the way. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. So that's what came up. I don't know if there's a different version.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. Yep.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So when you say you got it to 2 days a week, so this is, I don't know if this is the creator in me or the product guy in me. That doesn't sound fun at all.
Yeah.
Like that, like I want to not work. Like that sounds like, what are we doing? Like I'm maybe because you to initially get to that 7-figure level, it was the cleaning business, right?
Yep.
And not the stuff that you're doing now with Rise Up Kings.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm back to like 5 days a week, hard work. Because that was the deal, right? I didn't love that business. I mean, it was great and it provided for my lifestyle, but those extra days, I started with 1 day off. I took Wednesdays off for a year. Then I went to 2 days off. And with those days, I spent time with the family. So I spent an extra day. We went to the zoo, San Diego Zoo. We were wild animal park. We were doing all this stuff, giving Jessica more time and my son. I have 2 boys now, 8 and 11. And so we did that, but then eventually I got to the place where I started figuring out how do I live out my purpose, right? I'm a big purpose guy. And so I wanted to live out my purpose. So those extra days, man, I started focusing on making an impact with people until I eventually got to the place where it was 1 day, then 1 hour. We moved to Texas. I moved away from the business, and man, all of my time was then spent on what I loved. And so that's my hope for, like, man, we're in the United States. Like, you can make money doing almost anything.
Sure. Yeah.
So go find something that you enjoy and where you can make an impact and where you love. Don't stay at a miserable job. If you don't love your business, cool. Find a way to hire the right people to go do the things you don't like doing, so you can do what you actually love.
That's good.
Like that's what I teach. And so I got people to do everything else I didn't like, and I did the stuff I love, which was coaching my team. I love coaching my team. I love seeing them level up. Like that was my favorite thing to do in the business. So
you build it to 10 million. You basically get the right systems in place.
Yep.
And then you guys moved to Texas.
Yep.
You said about 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people moved.
Yeah, I know.
Into Texas about 3 years ago.
They're still moving, man. They're still moving.
Interesting enough, though, San Diego has the biggest net migration into San Diego in California. So as everyone's leaving the state, people are coming into San Diego County.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
It's because of all the folks who are in San Francisco and in the tech space that didn't want to go to Texas or Florida.
Got it.
And then they figured out, oh, wait, San Diego is beautiful and it doesn't have all the weird politics as San Francisco and LA. And so we've had a huge amount of tech folks and Silicon Valley folks come to San Diego because they can work remotely now. So it's the only county where there hasn't been a huge exodus.
Did not know that, because in general, California is having a pretty big exodus.
Huge.
So. And San Diego is one of the most beautiful places.
This is also true. Yeah. Yeah. So you end up going to Texas. And so is that where Rise Up Kings starts and the new stuff that you're doing?
Actually started out in Newport Beach. So we were living in Newport on the peninsula, and started running events out there on the beach, doing some beach stuff and a lot of our teaching. Got a cool building where I was. We did the events underneath it with in a garage area with the glass doors, and then we lived up above it, kind of work-live deal. So that was pretty fun. So did that we started in January of 2020. So 3 months after COVID hit with Rise Up Kings. And then, anyway, ended up still running events, still decided to kind of break the law and allow God to still make an impact. Even though
there was less laws in Newport Beach, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that is true.
You ever see that map where they show California and they show a little bit, and then for Newport Beach they just scratch it out and they write Florida?
Yeah. Newport's a unique little spot. It really was. So it wasn't as strict as even a couple cities away.
Yeah.
So we started running events. Bad timing to start an event company and a seminar company, but we ran events, and then eventually realized they were pushing vaccines pretty hard. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. However, I want to be able to make the decisions on if my kids get vaccinated.
Sure.
And so I just didn't like the pressure they were starting to put on us. And we figured if we're going to move, we got to do it while the kids are younger instead of older. So we just made the decision, moved to Dallas, Texas. Did not know one person in Dallas.
Wow.
All of our family's out here. Everybody's out here. And we've been out there for 3 years. We got 16 acres, and we do all the events on our
You do
on
the
our
events
property.
on your property. What part of Dallas are you in?
Kind of northern area. It's a place called Argyle, Flower Mound, South Lake kind of area.
Sure. So, and since then, Rise Up Kings, the seminars, primarily seminars, education, enrichment.
Yeah.
That's taken off for you.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that and maybe how people can get a hold of you if they're interested.
Yeah. Yeah, so how to get a hold of us, riseupkings.com, or follow me, Skylar Lewis, SKYLAR. But that, man, it's just it's been a blessing because I did a lot of secular personal development. However, there's just a gap, and I wasn't able to find faith-based. Like you could hear something that was 95% correct, right? But then just a little bit of deception in there could throw off someone's mindset, and it was doing it to me. And I was actually involved in a personal development company a while back where it was secular, and if one person walked away from the faith because they were now healed or they had personal power, right, and that would destroy me. And so I said, hey, I'm not going to do any personal development unless it's faith-based and there's this biblical foundation. So we launched it, and God's been blessing the whole thing, man. We've had thousands of people go through our events or virtual trainings. We've like he's been guiding the whole thing. I'm just kind of along for the ride, honestly.
Yeah.
Like he's just.
So you said 95%. You agree with a lot of the self-development up to 95%.
Yeah.
But 5%, you're like, this can potentially shipwreck someone's faith, or
Yeah.
who knows, right? What is that 5% that when you look into the self-improvement, self-development space, and you look at that information, which in my opinion, a lot of it is being taken from Proverbs, from Ecclesiastes. I mean, a guy like Alex Hormozy, who was once started in the faith-based space and has deconverted, unfortunately, has flat out said, like, yeah, I read Proverbs. I love Ecclesiastes. I love Solomon, right? And so, and basically has said, like, a lot of his business principles are from when he was a Christian, you know, which is the most bizarre thing, right? In terms of serving people and going above and beyond with the product and undeniable offer, all these things, right? So tell me about that 5%, that 5% where you go, ooh, I got to be careful with this, because I think people can also glean from that and look out from the type of voices they're consuming.
Well, it's subtle, dude. It's subtle with every unique speaker. So like in that case, right, Alex was a big personal development guy. So when you go into that world, your priority shifts into being more about yourself than about the kingdom. It's just it's a minor shift that happens with language, and everything stems right from language, our belief systems. Language is so important, and so I think it's subtle. There's no one specific thing. It's a shift in priorities, or it's a shift in a subtle mindset around maybe putting yourself first, or your own personal power, like Tony Robbins. Personal power. Yes, I believe we should have some personal power, but when you end there, right, and focus on personal power, you lose, like my wristband says, powered by God. You lose the whole premise that we need to lean on God. We need to be reliant on God, and like our power comes from Him. That's good. Not from ourselves. So that little subtle thing, it could shift somebody right out of the faith. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're also kind of tapping into some of the New Age practice in there, right? I'm very anti-New Agey, man. There's a lot of stuff going on right now that's like it's just too woo. And they mix it with Christianity sometimes. They'll bring up verses, right? Even, it's almost becoming a trend, kind of like the Christianity is becoming like a trend. Because from a Christian worldview, there's creator and there's creation, right? There's God and there's people, and God is perfect. God is all powerful, all knowing, all present, and people are broken and need Jesus and need to be saved. And though there is practical utility to building more confidence, or just the aspect of faith in and of itself, like believing you could do something, though there's utility to those things, I think where it crosses the line, in my opinion, with some of the self-development stuff is when you start saying things like your mind can do these things. Your mind can manifest realities. Your words create your worlds. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say encouraging things and be pleasant to be around. Your words do matter, but to say your words create worlds, right? Or your thoughts are things. Your thoughts are literal frequencies and energy, vibrations, and sound. Yeah. Like people believe this stuff, and we're like, whoa. Yeah. Now, how you perceive the world, does it matter? Absolutely. Do your thoughts matter? Absolutely. But not in a supernatural sense, right? It's God that's supernatural. We are natural. We are broken in our lack of Jesus, right? And so I see that, and I see Christians decreeing and declaring and manifesting and saying these things, and I'm just like, whoa, this is dark, you know? It is, and those are some signs, right? When you hear those words, and right, there could be some truth in some of those things, right? Yes. Like the words we do speak create. They can bring life, or they can bring death. Absolutely, right? There's some truth, but not in the sense of like if you say I want a Bugatti over and over and over again, and you could do all the things right, but you still may never get to the place of having enough to earn a Bugatti. For sure. Right. So traditional personal development, right? They've kind of stripped out Christ. And so we've just placed Christ back in and made it more, and really only done things that are biblically based. And so like we're that place. Our goal is to be like the household name when someone thinks, hey, where do I go heal childhood wounds, or go level up in business, or go join a group of men that are high achievers or that are working on themselves. Like we want to be the household name in the Christian faith in the country, where like we are that company that helps people get to the next level. Because my mom, she's been a Christian all her life, yet totally broken, still addicted to alcohol, still actually poor, like very broken. emotionally, spiritually, in every way, but she loves God with all of her heart. She's in the Bible. So it's like, well, where's the gap there? I thought if you love Jesus and you're in the scripture, it's just, no, man, there's extra work to be done. Right? You talk about therapy and counseling. Like, there's extra work to be done. Like, yes, you're going to heaven, but man, we got a lot of work to do. So where do we go do all that work then? Like, where do we go do all that work? And so we want to be that. We are, and we want to be well known as. That's kind of I'm just sharing my vision, man.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love this stuff, like that healing and watching people level up and become more excellent for Christ to glorify the kingdom.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, it's for the glory of God. Like Ruck's mission is to awaken a generation of men who lead themselves, their families, and their businesses at the highest level to glorify God. So if one guy can live a life of excellence and have passionate sex in his marriage, right, and him being out of debt, physically fit, right, just not obesely overweight, like that gives glory versus a guy that's struggling in debt, right? He's lost passion in his marriage, right? He's just in all these areas. It just doesn't represent excellence, and so we want to help people level up so they can represent Christ well. And the most important part's not all those things. That's the way we love. It's the way we love others and love Christ.
And again, to go back full circle, like having those areas in check, everything will start to click, right? And so I hear so much of the critique on manhood and men who are frustrated with the way marriage is and all these things. And it's like, man, are you doing your very best to control the areas you can control? And if you are prioritizing these 4 areas, generally speaking, not always, right, but generally speaking, things will begin to unlock, right? Finding a rhythm in your sex life starts to unlock if you're married, right? Your finances start to unlock. Because what happens is you start being the outlier. You start being what everyone else isn't. Everyone's overweight. Everyone is struggling. Everyone's living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of dudes are in sexless marriages. Like all these things are already happening. And so you just prioritizing properly and placing Jesus at the end of the, again, it's not saying
you become the light.
You become the light. And I'm not even saying it's a 1-for-1, right? Because I think that tragedy can strike and you can go through seasons and all these things. But because what I don't want to say is like, put your faith, family, fitness, and finances in order, and then you'll be fine. Like, no, because there's still could be curveballs. But if you control the controllables and you do the things that you can do, then I think everything else tends to fall in line, generally speaking, for most people.
100%. Yeah, it's right on. Right, the 4 pillars, and if they're ordered that way, from my perspective, and you focus and you're intentional with those daily, and if they're part of your routine, man, it can be a game changer.
Okay, so riseupkings.com. And then what is your Instagram if they want to reach out to you?
Skylar Lewis.
Okay. Word, man. Thank you so much for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Man.
Hopefully we'll have you back again and go a little deeper with you.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, we're out of here. Peace. We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And 2, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.